Chapter 8. Why were you like this? Why couldn't you just mind your own business? It had been a full month since you'd hung out with Rio. Your messages were barely getting through, barely getting seen. You'd ambushed Rio at her house once, 2 weeks ago, and she'd basically shoved you out. Since then, you hadn't spoken, not once. The only person you'd spoken to besides your desk mate in class was Akabane. You hadn't really said much to him either. The first time you'd seen him at the train station in normal casual clothes, which looked okay on him, you couldn't lie, though it was very weird. The only other time you'd seen Akabane wear ordinary clothes were at the mall, that one time you'd accidentally bumped into him, and at his pool party. It had been almost 3 months since that time, though it felt like it was just last week. Akabane and yourself had gotten stuck in a broom closet about a month later. A few days later, you'd seen him walking down the hill of E-class. You'd been finishing a presentation due the next day, going over your cue cards and such. You were tired out of your mind, and you'd almost collapsed when he'd called out your name. To save face, you'd acted as you usually did. However, you'd paid the price for it when you got home later that day. You hadn't been more than 2 minutes inside your room before you were on your bed, dead asleep. Thankfully, your alarm was automatically set for weekdays, regardless if you had school or not. The next time you saw Evil Incarnate was during an assembly. You were in charge of walking around campus, making sure no one was skipping. You hadn't caught a single person, which you'd expected. It was just procedure, your teacher had told you. You were supposed to be grateful for the opportunity, or something like that. You didn't care. You wanted to do the job and get it over with. Funnily enough, just as you were about to give up on your pursuit of students on the loose, just as you were about to begin heading back, you'd ran face first into someone's back. The uniform gave the culprit away immediately. Scowling, you'd gripped his shirt and pushed him away from you. As he stumbled forward, he turned around, a wicked grin plastered on his face as if he were about to lay into the person that had the audacity to not only touch him, but actually put their hands on him. Push him. Your scowl hadn't faded, though you had half a mind to smirk. "What are you doing here?" you'd asked. You'd known he hadn't been with his class. He was one of the most recognizable people in E-class, while everyone in the class was incredibly well known. Akabane just had a large reputation. He'd stepped up to you, demanding, "Did you just push me?" "I don't have time for this." You had me to move around him, but he'd gripped your arm. You almost let out a whine, but you'd bitten down on it. The sadistic bastard would have only enjoyed it more. His grip had been unreal, but you'd somehow managed to twist out of it, gripping his wrist right back. He'd bit his lip, narrowing his eyes slightly at the hold you'd had on him. Then something like recognition shone in his eyes as he met your gaze. "Get out of here." You nodded your head. He'd glared at you, but left nonetheless. Your most recent interaction with Akabane happened just a few days ago, 3 to be exact, though it was about to be replaced as you watched from a booth in a corner of the cafe you were at. Akabane, however, wasn't alone. Rio sat with him. Why? You had no idea, but they were acting a little too friendly for your liking. Whatever spell had Akabane put her under, she seemed giddy, flirty even. Oh, just there. She punched his arm lightly and blushed. Rio Nagamura blushed. A nightmare. This was a nightmare. It had to be. There could be no other explanation. Your poor, sweet, kind best friend had been swept up in his subtle charms and handsome facade. Your heart ached at the sight. You wanted to smash his face in. Your hand gripped the drink in your hand. They still hadn't noticed you. When they walked in, it didn't take long for you to notice. There were tons of girls and guys gawking at the male. It made you sick. like actually sick. You felt like you'd need medicine in a few minutes. You rubbed your stomach in smooth circles, trying to stop it from lurching every time your eyes set upon the two. The waiter that had aided you earlier walked up to you and asking if you were done with your drink. Nearly keeping yourself from throwing it across the room, you handed it to her with a shaky hand. She smiled as if in understanding, then followed your gaze and said, "He's really cute. Is he your ex?" Your heart plummeted. Is that his new lover then? You were so confused. She thought you were jealous of Rio? That you were seething over Akabane? It almost made you chuckle. Almost. Rio got up to use the bathroom, and as soon as she was out of sight, you shot for Akabane. You were upon him in seconds, his eyes wide when they met yours. He cursed under his breath, looking around, probably for Rio. You didn't care. What in the living shit are you doing here with her? He crossed his arms and leaned back, any remnants of shock turning into sadistic pleasure. His eyes narrowed slightly, but amusement traced his mouth. Why? Jealous? You scoffed. Of Rio? Please, she'd be insane, out of her mind, to date you. Akabane raised his brows, actual shock defining his features. You understood your mistake only after he said, "I meant me." A coat of redness and heat spluttered across your face. You dared to hope he couldn't see. No, Shit, Akabane said, grabbing you by the wrist, cutting off your utterly embarrassing stammer. You'd never done that, never stammered around anyone, let alone Akabane. It infuriated you. You never felt shameful and naked. Go, he urged. What? You semi-snapped out of your light daze. Go, he seethed in a whisper. Now, I'll find you later. He pushed you out of the cafe and back into the uncomfortable crowded space of the mall. Damn him, you cursed. Don't you worry, I'll be there whenever you want me. I need somebody who can love me at my worst. No, I'm not perfect, but I hope you see my worth. Since only you, nobody know I put you first. And for you, girl, I swear I do the worst.